Welcome. Welcome to the first walk on the UC campus to identify some of the most magnificent trees that have been planted here. And this is a good place to start because this is the new West Gate. It's always been a very good entry to the campus, particularly for the trees that were planted on both sides. And I will take you to our first giant, which is very close by to here. But notice the gate. It's a beautiful new gate donated by the class of 1955. And behind it are these cedars. These are Deodara cedars, remarkable trees. We'll see some of them, some specimens that are bigger than these ones. And now follow me up the sidewalk. This is a sequoia, Sequoia sempervivens. It's not the biggest one on campus, but it happens to have a beautiful crown. And not only that, it's very symmetrical, this particular one. And what I have always liked about this tree is that it's right next to cedars and also right across from redwoods. And this is where I learned to compare the leaves of a sequoia to those of a redwood. So come close and let's touch these leaves.
Okay,
Yeah, observe the leaves that are completely different than those of a redwood. We're going to stop by a magnificent redwood and you will see, actually I'm going to take a piece of this and you can take it home if you want to, and we will compare them later. I used to think that a sequoia and a redwood was kind of the same, but they're not at all, not at all. And this is a very good place to start that comparison. This tree may end being as tall as the General Sherman in Sequoia National Park, which is 295 feet tall. So I like to start the walk with this young giant. Type of magnolia, there are two types of magnolia trees on campus. Okay. Oh, it's beautiful. Look how beautiful the leaves are. These trees lost their leaves in the fall. And 2 weeks ago, there was nothing here. Then the flowers have come out, and now the leaves are coming out. See, the flowers are going to come down. They are all on the lawn here. But see, in this particular one here, the leaves are already out. This is a deciduous, losing the leaves, magnolia. And we will see others on campus where the leaves stay the whole time. And those are evergreen magnolias versus deciduous magnolias. Always keep a view in the distance because one of the glorious things is that you can see the mix of greens from the trees. Behind me, you can see the biggest giant on campus. This is a blue gum eucalyptus. And this huge giant is over 200 feet tall. Is guarding the entry to the campus very fittingly. Is not the only one because all here to my right is the eucalyptus grove. And the eucalyptus grove, was planted here not for wood purposes or beauty purposes. No, it was planted here to protect the cinder track. The cinder track was a running track on campus, and the wind would come from the ocean and bother the athletes, so they planted the eucalyptus trees from Australia in 1858, I think, to protect the track. And our big giant here is one of them. Okay. Our next giant is behind me. It's a deodar cedar. The same way that the big blue gum is part of the eucalyptus grove, this cedar here is also part of a family, as you can see, of deodar cedars that were planted here. The interesting thing about these trees are you can recognize them everywhere because their tip, also called a leader in the tree, the top of the tree, always is nodding, is always bent down. Each one of them, can you see that? And this does not happen with others, like the Atlas cedar or the cedar of Lebanon, which are in the same family. They do not, and we will visit those. But the deodar cedar, which is a very ornamental tree that is planted a lot all over California, and it actually came from Africa. These cedars are all from Africa. Have that particular characteristic. And I emphasize this one as one of our giants. They have a beautiful way of spreading their branches. And they are, of course, evergreens. We just talked about a type of cedar, the deodar cedar. Behind me now, our next giant is the Port Orford cedar, also called a Lawson cypress. It's a false cedar. It's not a main. The name cedar has been given to it because it has a similar characteristic of evergreen leaves, but it's not a cedar. It's really a cypress, and we will look at the leaves. The interesting thing about these trees are, as you can see, there are multiple trunks. Well, there's only really one trunk, but some branches come down and they root themselves and they start growing next to it. So there is always a clump of trunks together, which we will go close and see them better. That's one thing. And the other one is that it has a kind of a pendant look to it, the leaves do. These trees, you know them because they are used in the manufacturing of boats. The type of wood is soft but durable and not permeable, and is very much favored for the construction of boats. And also, believe it or not, for pencils. A lot of your pencils are made out of the wood of the Port Orford cedar. Port Orford, which I think is a place north of here or something. Okay? Well, now I introduce you one of our, this giant is a Port Orford cedar. But it's not a cedar, it's really a cypress. And in some ways it's similar to the sequoia as you look at the leaves. It looks to you like there are several trees here, but it's only one. The trunk of the tree is right here, the main trunk. What happened was that the branches came down, rooted themselves, and started growing up. So you always, when you have a Port Orford cedar, you'll see a multiple trunk effect. Very characteristic of this particular tree. The wood of this tree, and all his brothers, is very much favored for the construction of boat. Boat building favors this wood for its, it's malleable, it's not permeable by water, it's soft enough to make it bend for in boats, and it's also used to make pencils in America. And notice the effect too. You recognize them always for this kind of like a whipping effect of the branches. Okay. We have come to this corner of the campus now to meet our next giant, which is the redwood in the background. This is the Wiley redwood. We cannot come all the way close because they are building an understructure. They're replacing the understructure of pipes and things on the campus. And we hope they'll do a good job and take good care of it. But this Wiley tree was planted by people who picnicked here in 1850. And they planted this redwood, which, you know, redwoods grow from seed. Anyway, and it is not the tallest redwood on campus, but probably the most historic one. It was named after Samuel Wiley, who was the president of the College of Oakland, that then became the University of California here in Berkeley. But in front of it, there is a remarkable tree, one of my favorites on campus. This is a Ginkgo biloba, or maidenhair tree. These trees are actually fossils. These are very old species from China. And they are very favored as ornamentals because they have a beautiful way of spreading their branches, and they have a beautiful coloration in the fall. You're seeing it in its winter outfit. Soon the leaves will come out. And the leaves all have these, they look like a little fan, F-A-N. And when you know them, you recognize them everywhere. Maidenhair tree. It's called maidenhair in English because the maidenhair fern has a similar leaf. You know, you've seen the maidenhair fern. It has this light green, very light. Okay. Here is a redwood tree, and we stopped by the sequoia before, and remember it was like scale, thin leaves. I have to learn the real terms. But come here now and look at the redwood. The redwood has a completely different leaf structure. They are spread out and leaf needles. Nothing better than seeing it and touching it to see the difference. There are no needles in a sequoia, just the sprays of stalks. So now we are in the back of Hilgard Hall. Hilgard Hall was the School of Agriculture, and many trees were planted around it. Actually, in the front of it, where we'll go next, some interesting variety of species. It was like a botanical garden. Before the botanical garden up Strawberry Creek Canyon, the botanical garden was here. Behind me is, once again, another true cedar. This beautiful giant is called an Atlas cedar. Atlas is for the mountains in North Africa. And this tree is a native species of the Atlas Mountains of North Africa. If, when we are in the distance, we may look at its tip, and you will see that its tip is erect, straight up, not nodding, like the deodar cedar. Otherwise, they are very similar. They are hard to differentiate. But this has a more bluish green, more blue in the color of the leaves that the deodars do. They are more green, as you may remember or will notice next when you go by them. Well, here we are at Memorial Glade. Memorial Glade is a new feature on campus. There were a lot of temporary buildings around here, and there were a lot of trees too that are now gone, but they are being replanted in a very careful manner. But we've come to the top of our walk, and our giant behind me is a native of California, the Monterey cypress. Monterey cypress are representative of the coast of Monterey. They are native of that particular small area, but of course they have been replanted in many places. They have a way to grow where the branches spread a little different. It's a conifer, of course. It's Monterey cypress. And it's a very nice specimen because they tend to spread and not get as tall, but this one sits beautifully there, and it's a historic tree on the UC campus. We will now start our way down, going in front of Hilgard, where the first botanical garden was. And by the way, the campus would welcome suggestions for trees that could be planted, because there is an active process of replacing those trees that have passed on to a better life and putting new ones. It hasn't come to fruition yet. It's too bad we don't go to the Campanile. There are some wonderful things over there. The London plane trees and all of that. Well, another time. These are the giants. What colors, huh? What beautiful colors. Of course, they're putting redwoods everywhere. No, I don't know for sure. No, it's a redwood. It's a redwood. It's a redwood. Okay, we're now in what used to be the botanical garden of the University of California in Berkeley. And that's the reason why you find a number of species that would never have naturally come up here. And we introduce you to this giant, which happens to be a Canary Island pine. Canary Island pines are very much favored these days to be planted. There is a similarity to the ponderosa pine of California, but it's different. It has a beautiful leaf or needle structure that is very satisfying, very ornamental. They grow very straight up. They're very hardy. There's a big grove of them by the Campanile. You can see them as a family there. And it's one of the most planted trees in UC campus these days, is the Canary Island pine. And it was first planted on campus here, that particular specimen. Look at the different color from the one next to it. Also, if you see the cones, you'll see the cones are erect, they go up, where in the ponderosa pine, the cones are bunched under the leaves. And then you just realize the difference. Otherwise, I used to confuse them. We have spent a lot of time with cedars and cypresses. We come to a very different species of trees. Behind me, you see our next giant is a Lombardy of Italy, Lombardy poplar. Lombardy poplar. Poplars are very interesting trees. They're beautiful in the fall. We're visiting them in the winter today. But these trees were a problem for a long time because they have a very invasive root structure. And they also die young. This happens to be quite a giant and it's done well here, but there were several others around the Life Sciences building that are gone. But the interesting thing is there is a renewed interest in these trees because the root structure of these trees does two things regarding contamination. These trees stop contamination to go with the rainwater in the underground, and they break the toxics. They have is what is called phytoremediation. So there's a great interest now in planting these trees near pollution areas because they would improve the quality of the dirt. This is a beautiful specimen, particularly in the fall, because the leaves turn beautiful yellows and reds. And this is the Lombardy poplar. Now, very near it, we'll stop by the yellow poplar, which is a very different sort of tree. It's also called a tulip tree. They are in the same family. They are deciduous. They are poplars. And the yellow poplars are planted very much on streets. For example, all University Avenue from the campus to the bay has the tulip trees, yellow poplars, planted on both sides. And we'll go and see them next. Sometimes we have to pay homage to giants that have disappeared. Behind me, you see two eucalyptus trees. They are a species of eucalyptus that is very beautiful. Notice the trunk is very smooth and a beautiful color, very light. These are Eucalyptus vinimali. The reason I point these two out to you is that these are seedlings from a giant that was here. It was one of the favorite trees on campus. It was a gigantic eucalyptus and it died. I believe it died when the construction of the addition to the Life Sciences building. So these two seedlings that were born underneath the big giant are now growing quite nicely, and they are it's a remembrance of something past, which was that eucalyptus giant. And you can copy and paste here too, huh?
Yeah.
So then maybe when we talk about the blue gum, that you can when I mentioned eucalyptus grow.
Yeah, we can have different dialogue over this part right here.
Yeah. See, the child is feeling the trees, you know. I can't wait to bring Miranda here, but Rebecca brings the tree. Well, friends, now we come to our last giant, the 12th giant on campus we have selected for you. It's fitting that it is a California native. You see at the end of this road a beautiful specimen of Monterey pine. And it's fitting that behind it and dwarfing the building is a human construction building, the tallest building in downtown Berkeley. It's the Wells Fargo building. And here is the Monterey pine. Monterey pines are awkward giants. They spread in a strange way. They lean, as you can see, their own particular, each one a different way. And this is a remarkable grove of them on this area of the campus. They are near many redwoods, but they stand on their own with their own beauty. It's a very hardy tree, the Monterey pine. Very dark trunk, deep green color. And I identify very personally with this California giant. We're back to Westgate. We'll walk over there and say goodbye for now. Now, these walks are presented once a month There's 12 structure walks. The next one is going to be historic trees, and it will start at the faculty club with the California Buckeye. And we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll take the tour by yourselves or with us again.